Is the product management mindset, the product mindset so critical? I'm going to talk about the criticality of this mindset. Now, what is a product? Put your questions in chat, please, not QA if possible. Chat's much easier for me to work with than the QA section. I mean, it's good and all, but it's much easier just to sit there and work through chat for me. What is a product? So we're going to talk about what a product is. Product versus project. I'm going to get into product life cycles because we do. I love Jack Reacher. I love it. We're going to get into product life cycles because in deployment of the solutions that we build, we don't take that into consideration. And I'm hoping that's one of the things you get out of this is that you just can't dump and run because people adopt things over time. And it just because you told somebody to do something doesn't mean they're actually going to do it. Business drivers, we talk about, the idea of what is a business model and how does that tie to product mindset. Very high level research, very high level customer 101, because that could be a whole session in and of itself. And then I'll jump and end with tools. So we'll talk a little bit about lean startup and we'll talk a little bit about design thinking again at a very high level. So why is this important? Because I said so. No, not at all. This is a phenomenal book. I just did a presentation live this week and someone was reading it. We both came to the same conclusion that Mr. Talib is very, very, what's the word again? I just forgot it off the top of my head. Very pompous, very, very, very full of himself. And you could see that in the writing. But the research he did for this book, The Black Swan, can be terrifying. And the fact that planning and designing will not catch the black swan. And the black swan is those things that are going to make a difference. Those things are going to that we're going to catch and be able to ride to further success. A report that might be able to generate the information that accounting needs to fix cash flow. The functionality within the CRM system that will allow the salespeople to better track and go after the people that they're selling to. Those type of things. Just can't plan for it anymore. What's going on is we have to tinker. We have to test. And as we tinker and we test, we're going to find these opportunities. So it's like we can't do until we know, and we can't know until we test. So we can't do until we know. We can't know until we test. The all-knowing guru on the mountain is going away. So what we want is this product mindset, and that's why we call it Agile. We got the overlay of this idea of trial and error, fail, learn, adjust, fail, learn, adjust. So the company that I owned and sold successfully, ASPE, it was built, I always joke, it was built on the bones of 1,000 failed ideas, 1,000 failed product ideas. We found a way to test legitimate products into the marketplace in a very low fidelity, low cost way, and then make judgments accordingly based on the metrics we were getting. But I had to test because I couldn't guess. What you guys on the education side of things, what you folks see as a nice to know versus a need to know was very difficult to see unless you test it. So in order to think about this testing mindset, we have to get into what is this product definition? And when you see that word profit, one of the things you're going to hear a lot, hopefully a lot from me if I do this right, is I'm going to talk about internal versus external customers. You folks do a ton of work to make systems, processes function effectively and efficiently. I'm sorry you're unable to view the screen. Keep trying to play around because I think everybody else can see what I'm presenting. So basically, you have customers. You just have to understand them and understand why they're a customer because they're utilizing what you build to be more productive. So ultimately, you folks are profit generators, but your profit generators based on driving increased productivity. The power of us as workers here in the United States is the level of productivity we can drive, which increases our salaries. More productivity, increased pay. More productivity, increased profits, because you don't have to have as many people doing what needs to be done. So a product or service is going to be something that hits a particular market, for your case, a particular group within the organization, and it yields productivity, increased productivity for that organization to continue. And it has to have a continuation and a life. The thing is that new projects, when deployed, then have a life. The debate I had last night with the Toronto group was, how big is the operations side after deployment, or does or am I trying to say the product management mindset needs to take that over? What I believe, based on what I am seeing, is that because of VUCA, deployment, the product mindset and project management has to go beyond just deployment, where the PMO, the project management office, has to convert to a value management office and look at the stretch of its mindset. And I'll talk about what that stretch means as we get deeper into the presentation. Again, questions, comments, thoughts, don't hesitate to throw them in chat. So we understand this good and service thing. The thing about this, though, is it's becoming muddy. You could spend a whole presentation talking about this. I'm not going to, but it's muddy now because a good is also a service. Ultimately, look at beds. If you buy a bed these days, it's going to come with an app. The app is going to tell you things about how you're sleeping, what your oxygen level is when you're sleeping, maybe when you get into REM sleep. It's going to be able to, it's starting to tell a ton of stuff. Now think about this. It was a good. You should just go out and buy a bed and sleep on it. Ultimately, it might get to the point where you buy a bed service and they deliver different beds to you based on how they're seeing your sleeping patterns. Imagine that. Be pretty interesting. Don't know if it will occur, but that's the change that's happening and how these two things are coming together. The same internally. You might start offering data and presenting data to people internally as a product. It's converted. You've converted now that what the tool was, the output of that tool, and that becomes a product. That service becomes a product. Internally, your companies can actually look at the services that you do internally, and you can convert that into a product. And of course, the big story there for folks is AWS. Amazon Web Services, all it was an internal capability that they decided to see if it could be sold externally. I take the sleep number bed. I love sleep number beds. My biggest thing, I'm a Tempur-Pedic bed guy myself, Aaron. Oh my gosh, I love my Tempur-Pedic bed. And I got one of the last ones that were like rock solid. It was just, this is a rock, you sleep on it. So anyways, Amazon was even surprised at the success of AWS. So you see a lot of companies now with strong capabilities internally looking at trying to flip it and see if they could sell it as a product, as an external product. So you have this concept of goods and services. So I like a little bit of product theory. So AWS is both. It's ultimate, but you know what? It's an interesting question. I would tell you, at the end of the day, it's a product because I'm putting things in it. I have to have it. This product being a cloud service. But you could debate that it's also a service, but ultimately it is something I have to use to order to gain profits because I'm increasing productivity by using it. And I'm gauging my customer in a different way. So product theory is a blast. This is the external mindset. So I've been doing product management now for about 20 years. I've easily launched at least 500 different products plus into the marketplace. And so when I look at things now, it almost becomes like system 2 flow. That's the whole Daniel Kahneman system 1, system 2 thinking. The idea that I first look at my organizational capability. What I'm thinking about, is this something we can actually do? Is it something that we have to build? Is it something we have to buy? Is it something we have to rent, or partner for? And then, is it worth building? You got internally, you make some of these same decisions. Or should I go rent it for a while? Basically, all AWS is rented storage. So you don't have to buy the storage arrays or rent or build and manage the storage. But first and foremost, value creation. You want to build something that someone's going to exchange something to get it. This is a web seminar. You exchanged your time to attend this session, right? Assuming that you're going to get value. I hope you do. I have the organizational capability, the Zoom environment, my knowledge and experience, but I had to see if this would be valuable. And those that are attending have taken their hour to attend, and they gave their contact information for that. So there is an exchange. Value creation is trying to get to the point of how much level of exchange can you get for what you're creating. Now, the best thing happens when you have a high amount of value and you have a very simple organizational capability to deliver it. That's called storage. Apple charges me 99 cents for storage every month. They pay about a penny for that. That I call margin magic. That's again another conversation we could talk about. Ultimately, the last piece for me is competitive understanding. It's not necessarily a good thing to be a first mover externally. I like, sometimes watching what people are doing, because usually the first movers are working within a very small universe size. And I'm looking to see if there's a second or third degree of interest before I jump in. So these three filters can be very powerful, or are not very powerful, I'm mumbling there, are critical in thinking about external products. Now, most of you on this call work on internal services and products and services, or both. So now we got a different diagram to look at. First off, we go now to desirability. And what you want to be thinking about internally is, am I willing to exchange my time to not only learn how to do this, but then to continue to do it? Have I been shown enough? Do I desire this? And the thing is, both, you want to have feedback from them when you're searching for desirability, but you also want to be able to bring in things that they don't already know to see if that might be desirable. This is why prototyping and testing is so important these days, because as an internal customer, I don't always know what I need to have. Sometimes I have to be shown. As an external product manager, that's my job. I want to build things that not only do I think people want and they know about it, but also things that, based on what I'm seeing, they need, but they haven't really thought about it. Now, feasibility goes back to your organizational capability. Do you have what it takes to actually do it? Now, this is where your build, rent, buy concept comes to play. But the bigger one, to maximize productivity, you're looking at viability. Can you scale and repeat that which you're going to do? So it's one thing to see that we have something. It's another thing to see if we can scale and repeat it. Or we may build it first, but ultimately we know we have to make it viable. And you can get in trouble with this. I've had built products that people were interested in, but we could not do it effectively and efficiently enough to provide the proper return. But I'm also of a school that says any revenue is good revenue, because you're getting customers to engage you, then you can figure out other things to do for them. And I think that some of that adage holds true internally as well. So you have these filters. So what I'm saying to you is that when you consider any product, internal or external, whether you're using a canvas, whether you're using an Excel document, whether you're using your brain and remembering these things, you want to be documenting your thoughts, and it should be a living document. What is the viability constraints? What is the feasibility constraints? What are the desirability constraints? And I added one thing to this from our class. I added what other people are doing. That's why you want to be parts of trade associations in your specific area of skill, or trade associations that are going to take you to another area you're interested in, or going to trade shows, or listening to webinars like this, because you want to hear what other people are doing. You want to hear what other people are thinking, so you can bring that in, because you can't work in the box. Product people, if they work in a box, they're completely hosed, because there is no viability and you can't find desirability in that box, because everything will look red or everything will look blue, and blue will solve the problem, red will solve the problem. All right, so now as we change our mindset now from an internal perspective, what we're going to talk about is product versus project. What does this mean? Yeah, feel free to share your LinkedIn or your or an organization that you're a part of in chat. Aaron, thank you very much for doing that. The IAB is a fantastic trade association with a ton of information going on. Sorry, Nancy, you raised your hand, Nancy, but I don't do the raise the hand thing in the session. I can't pull it off. So if you have a question, Nancy, just go ahead and put it into chat, and I'll be able to respond to it. So for the rest of the session, I want you to be thinking about this. We're the best IIBA chapter. Love it. No problem, Nancy. Great. Thanks. Where are you in the product management phase? Are you out of project, excuse me? Are you working on something you're considering to build? Then you have product management in the build cycle. We are building something, and we want to make sure that what is built ultimately solves the need it was intended to. And that need changes because volatility and uncertainty and change is rapidly growing. So you know that if you start something, if it takes 6 months, it's going to be different. And this is where the world of Agile, Scrum methodologies happen. The other change here is that from my perspective, you now have to deploy, and in deploying, you have to maintain it, because what you built has a life cycle now. What you built has a life cycle. And because of that, it just can't be maintained as in I'm only breaking, fixing, I'm not thinking. Operations ultimately goes to maintenance, break, fix, adjust, bake. It's not looking at what it should be doing, where it should be going. So in the context of this presentation, I want you to be thinking about that. Where do you fit? Are you doing a lot of the out of project analysis? And you're looking at what it is that you should be building? Are you looking at this as it relates to in project? And then finally, I'm asking all of you to consider what it would mean to take that mindset after deployment. So, yeah, because what I'm trying to say here is that product management is going to be looking at things as a product manager. I saw the question before, Chitan. As a product manager, I live this life. I have a product idea. I have a group of product ideas. I want to figure out which one is valuable enough to build. All right. So I have testing. I might use lean startup in that phase to help me test ideas. Then I pick something that I know we should be doing. As a product manager, I'm involved in that Scrum project most likely, or a hybrid Agile project most likely, or maybe even a waterfall project. I'm involved because I want to make sure that there's a mindset about the evolution of things going on as you're doing the work. Then I was involved, so I know what was finally built, I believe, is going to be the most value for the current state of the universe. Then as a product manager, I ultimately have a bunch of stuff going on that I have to measure and adjust and decide to update it, up to fix it, make it better, or maybe to kill it. That was my world. What should I be building for the future? When I pick something to build, do it the best you could possibly do, and then finally be able to manage the stuff that I've got. Okay, see, but I've seen a project management role in product management as well. Yeah, you don't want to, what you got to say is that you have to run the project inside of the in project work. You got to run the project. So you're going to run a project under times, cost, and scope, as this slide says, because you have to have an output and you have to manage budget. But also, you have to have the product mindset to understand that outcome trumps everything. Outcome trumps everything. Impact trumps everything. What I'm saying is that when you are in projects, you want that project manager, if they don't have a product manager supporting them, to look at outcome as the most critical thing, because it's that outcome that produces the value that you need and what you're trying to do. So yes, you have both. Sometimes it's like wearing both hats, like in the BA project management world in the early stages of business analysis. What you found out is that the project manager liked to wear both hats, but they realized they couldn't because there's so much involved in running the project that, you know, they weren't giving enough time to the requirements gathering, internal requirements gathering that was needed. So a business analyst basically does very detailed work that's in the realm of being a product manager. And the product manager is orchestrating not to get the project done, but to make sure that what is being done can sell. And when I use the word sell, remember, externally, it's an exchange. Internally, it's time. Am I going to take my time to use what you built? And because I'm taking my time, am I more productive? That's the questions to be asking. I don't know why my slides are being goofy. So when you look at this a little bit more deeply, what we want to do is we want to be able to do the out of project testing, and whether it has a project manager mindset, a project manager using a product management mindset, whether it's a BA doing service design or a BA doing solution design, you want to be focused on testing different things. What might work, what will work, what's going on, because the more you test up front, the less output you need. I want to be sure that I can build what is needed and valued with the least amount of effort. Think about it this way. The more I don't know, the more I have to build to protect me from what I don't know. The more I know, the less I have to build initially to get impact. Once I get impact, then because I'm also managing the after deployment, can I grow that thing out? A case in point for me is that I would minimize what my product was to a prototype that could be on a brochure and send that out to get an outcome. An outcome being people engaging that and saying they're interested in taking what was on that brochure. If I saw the right cues, then I would do a minimal value of MVP, minimum viable product, and send that to market. And then if it scaled, I updated and grew that product into something that could be seen as extremely valuable, not just for what it was delivering, but all the other valuable components around it. So what I like to call this is that there's also a diminishing return on quality during the early phases of coming up with what is needed. You don't want to enhance quality until you know it's something that has an impact. And that can sound like heresy to people, but it is in VUCA. It just is. So again, whether it's a positional situation or a mindset situation, you want the project management side to always be thinking about the output. Are we doing the things that we need to be doing? Are we have the right resources? Is everything on time? Are we maintaining budget? And I'm not saying that's bad or good. I'm saying that is. What we're asking now is, can we take these elements of product management and overlay that mindset into the active completing the product that you're developing, or the solution that you're developing? And this is around the in-project side of things, where solving the problem as tight as you can is better than just throwing a bunch of stuff in it. And if we could do more upfront in learning, we could do less in what we have to build. Now, this might be solved by having a product manager overseeing the entire life cycle I talked about, or multiple product managers. And you're getting that with this concept of lean portfolio management that SAFe has been talking about and that IC Agile's been talking about. Or you could do this by the product management and or business analyst taking that next step, where I'm not just about myopically trying to figure out exactly what the requirements are, but I'm also looking at, of those requirements, what really should be done and what can be held off, and what can I test for the future. So he's talking about very different acronyms. Does it matter? No, just think about it as minimum viable product, minimal viable function, whatever you want to say. It's ultimately a prototype that can be engaged and tested against. And then it can be scaled if it's worthy of value. And what I like to talk about is a lot of that should be done before the project is kicked off. Before the project is kicked off. The mistakes, I think Scrum, Hybrid Scrum, SAFe has really done a great job of attacking the volatility that we're feeling when somebody's made a decision to do something. But because of that increased volatility, the decision to do something needs a lot more work done. And the sponsors and the executives who you think should be deeply involved with that are too overburdened because of change, because of their external responsibilities, that this SDLC world has to get deeper involved with that. And not by just throwing a bunch of consultants at it. That out of project world is where real value needs to be driven. So when you're in the product management mindset, you got to remember, I'm moving around a little bit. Sometimes I get uncomfortable in my chair. It said I think we should find a new definition which combines project and product to achieve new value. They complement each other. Absolutely. And that's great. Maybe we do. There's a complement here. What I'm saying is that if you can overlay this to the end project side, you're going to get better value regardless of what methodology you're using. Now, Scrum tries to do this based on its framework itself. But what I'm saying is the mindset should permeate across all aspects of the SDLC and the understanding of this. And then also I'm debating that we need to bring this, sorry, my cable's all over the place. We need to bring this to the analysis of what should be done And we have to do this product mindset after deployment. Man, there's so much money, productivity to happen by just reevaluating and redoing the things that we have. And operations and maintenance can't do that. So everything has a life cycle. Everything has a life cycle. We have to look at that. Once we introduce something, it doesn't die. It doesn't die to us. There's marketplace conditions that change, that require us to change and adapt what it is that we're working on, to the point where we should be killing stuff. What happens in SDLC environments, because we don't carry this, is you have this old chaotic system with about 1,000 patches on it, because all maintenance did was patch the crap out of it. Next thing you know, you got so many patches on it, you don't even know where the patches begin and where the patches end, because you just covered it up. Whereas if you're doing from a product mindset, hey, that technology has reached maturity, maybe instead of 1,000 patches, you only did 250, and then you bring something new in. And of course, something new scares people, but the opportunity cost of not doing that needs to be shown. That's a product mindset. A product mindset is enabling those who are in that world of maintenance to be able to articulate why it needs to die and needs to be replaced. I think customized into a corner. I love it. That's another big problem. We solved, in a lot of cases, we solved it once decided we could do it good and do it well. But there's major problems in post-deployment, and there's major problems in figuring out what to do. That's one slide I showed. Because things need to die faster. Patches aren't going to get you to the promised land. And I think all of you are seeing that now. In a lot of cases, it's driving you crazy. So maybe somebody who owns the overall portfolio can come in and make those decisions faster, because this cycle happens all the time. And there's different people and different mindsets that operate through this cycle. So an example for a training class, a hot new technology, I'll have a very limited course material, but a very, very expert guru instructor. And most of what people are buying is the instructor's ability to articulate in as simple as possible what the technology is and how to utilize it. As the interest in that technology grows, the type of instructor changes, the amount of content changes. You may ultimately add e-learning, because e-learning is easier to engage, especially at maturity level. And the instructor becomes more of a facilitator and an educator and less of a guru. And I think some of you might have gotten into an example of where you had an educator guru trying to teach a very hot new topic, or you had a guru trying to teach an old topic. And that both are bad. But this is part of the life cycle mindset. And you overlay that with adoption, you can see some of the problems you're facing. Overlaying this with adoption, not just seeing them as separate. And I'll talk about that in a second. Questions or thoughts at this point? I'm doing a time check here to see how I'm doing. I'm a little bit behind. But thoughts and comments, any books that anybody wants to share, any additional feedback you want to share, don't hesitate to do that. So the adoption curve, this is it. This is it. I mean, nothing has changed here. And it drives me crazy because I see people deploy projects, services, and just walk away and think that everybody's going to do it. Not going to happen. Every product manager knows that there is this adoption cycle, and you have to know and support when they possibly might, when your product crosses the chasm and it becomes more used, or is it not going to cross that chasm? It needs to be killed. What we want to do is we want to utilize and we want to pinpoint these early adopters here on this left side. so that we can use those people as part of our testing in the out of project phasing. Because even though it's an opportunity cost and the time of them doing their real jobs, a lot of these folks aren't necessarily the best people at their jobs. A lot of times the best people at their jobs are in that early majority and late majority. They don't care about the tools, they're just doing their work. So there isn't as much inefficiency as you would think in getting these early adopters to participate. On the external product side, we call this Agile market entry. Chris Morrison does a ton of work on this. These are people that are cowboys, rebels, troublemakers, as Chris calls them, on the external side, and they're always out there trying to find the new ways and the new things. And they're not necessarily maybe the best salesperson or the best product manager. Here's one important question: where does product vision, product roadmap, product? This falls into out of project. Stan, that's all related to out of project work. What is the vision for this thing? Out of project. What is my roadmap? Out of project. What is my strategy? Out of project. What you do when you get in project is you make sure that those three things are still viable, or if it has to be changed while you're building it. Doing Agile right, transformation without chaos is really good. Stephanie, thank you for sending that in here. But that's the thing. When you're in project, it's not the fact that you're locked into a vision, or you're locked into a roadmap, or you're locked into the strategy. It's that you are seeing if that changes as you're doing the work. But the vast majority of that stuff should happen out of project and should be tested using testing techniques that, you know, future state product managers, future state solution designers, future state internal management consultants would be using. The product lifecycle and vision road mapping are two different things. You're getting things mixed up. When I'm working and trying to figure out what to be built, I put a vision on it. When I roll a product out, ultimately, then it begins to have a life cycle. And then you have to watch that product during its life cycle. I come up with a concept, I test that concept, then I build that concept, then I see if that concept is going to be utilized. That's where the life cycle comes in. I can't have a life cycle at visioning because there's no way I'm going to know, you know, if that thing's even going to work, or if it's going to make it through the life cycle, or if it's going to make it through its adoption cycles. You're getting some things mixed up, which is okay. We can walk through that. But ultimately, what I want project managers to realize is that after deployment, this is what happens. It's not instantly deployed. People are utilizing it at the early stages. Then they're talking about it. There should be a strategy around pushing the marketing of that solution out so we can catch the early majority and the late majority, who are the best people at their job, to get them to become more productive by using it. So what I'm talking about here is once you're out of project, whatever you're out of project, whatever you're doing gets deployed. And that's where this adoption curve happens. And that adoption curve, if it is something that crosses the chasm, we have to find ways to ensure that it provides value to the early majority and late majority as well, because they're the ones that are your best and most effective and efficient workers. We see them as bad. I see them as wonderful. That's where, from an external perspective, the 34 and the 34 is where I make all my money. That's a big universe size. From an internal perspective, those are the people that do the best work. Those are the people, if they latch on, will become more productive. Those are the people that will ultimately increase profit for a company based on the productivity of the solution you made. I hope that's not sounding like word jumbo or word mishmash, but that's a really important concept I wanted to get across. So when we look at business drivers, we want to understand that there's a customer need perspective and there's a financial perspective. Good, thanks, Kelly. Appreciate that. So we just can't, as internal stewards of a company, we have to understand that there's a balancing act here. And this is so hard. I only want to do what's great for I want to delight my customer. Yes, but there's also business considerations. Goes back to the organizational capability. It goes back to rate of return. It goes back to other elements within the portfolio, what gets first priorities. Good product managers have to balance the business with what they can do and what the customer wants. And ultimately, internally, you are looking at saving money. The best thing internally that can happen is that I make that X salesperson more productive so I don't have to hire other salespeople. If I don't have to hire other salespeople, my sales cost goes down, the percentage of revenue, and I make more money. And this person here, that salesperson, makes more money, and they're going to stay longer. The thing is, I don't think folks realize, internally speaking, your salespeople, if they're utilizing their systems right, if they're making quota and achieving quota, your company's going to make money. It's going to be more stable, because the worst thing that can happen to a company, especially during bad times, is your sales people leaving. That's really hard to get over. So that's a business thing that we have to be thinking about. Internally, you're thinking about balancing what's my CapEx, how much CapEx do I have, how's that going to affect OpEx, and then where does my rate of return come into? And good project managers on this understand this concept. And there's a balancing act. It's just not about the rate of return. There has to be a justification. Some of that is how do you value opportunity cost. Same with a business. A lot of businesses, you see these multiples, it's goodwill. There's a whole element of buying a company, which is goodwill, which is your thought about what could happen to this thing, how it could grow. In product world, it's not just rate of return, it's also painting the picture of what would happen if you didn't do it, and being able to articulate that. All right, so, okay, is it okay not to have a project manager in product development using Agile, or does the product manager owner manage? No, you have to have both. Both. Yes, you need a project manager in this process. The only thing is we want the project manager to understand these concepts and constructs. So the product manager's job is to align this and get to a business model. A business model that helps you tie in your desirability, your viability, and your feasibility. And realizing that what I'm trying to do is, on the feasibility side, I'm trying to reduce the effort to get to test whether it's valuable or not. I want to reduce the effort. That's where there's a declining return on quality during your testing of what should be done. We got to realize there's lots and lots of failures in this. So product manager handles different responsibilities in different companies. What's the most impactful aspect of product management? The most impactful product management impact is the ability for them to support the out of project work, to be able to do the customer analysis, internal and external, to do the organizational capability analysis, to do the viability, feasibility analysis, to be able to test which of these things should be brought into project. That's the biggest value out of project. In project, the value is that they are making sure that if we have to adjust strategy, vision, roadmap because of the changes that are going on during the course of the project. And then out of project, the product manager is critical for making sure that you don't over maintenance things you build You kill when you need to kill, and you roll out when you need to roll out, so you get extra value, and don't spend a ton of money on maintaining something that you could have killed in the first place. And Aaron, that's a good thought there too as well. So ultimately, you take this risk because the risk is greater for doing nothing than testing and failing. That's the part of what you have to believe, that because of the volatility that we have in this environment, because of the challenges associated with change, we have to believe that the cost of failure is less than the cost of not doing. So what approaches and tools, Kelly? I'll have some time to end with a couple of those tools, but that's when we'll start getting into deeper conversations. We have a great product management class that gets into the tools and the techniques that you would use as well. Here, I'm just trying to lay a foundation for you, but I'll show you a couple of methodologies. You want to touch your internal or external customer. You want to watch them, you want to interview them, you want to learn. Project managers don't have the time. Business analysts are looking at a specific aspect of this in most cases. The product manager, that's why the position is needed, to be able to look at externally as well as internally. Because remember, as more things get webified, you folks internally are going to be getting closer and closer to the external customer. That adds a whole other level of challenge. And that's where the product manager can come in using the techniques of customer research and customer interviewing, both the external customers and those internal customers that are engaging them with the systems they're building, to be able to understand and get to what the next step should be smarter and faster. Understanding your persona, that's a tool, Kelly, that a product manager uses. Business analysts also use it, but I have a very strong persona on project managers. I've been selling to project managers for about 18 years now. So when I look at a project manager between the ages of 30 and 55, they come in later because they have to have skills and understanding and knowledge. They can't just come in most cases and be a successful project manager. They end earlier in life because it's a very stressful job, and they usually move into operations. 60% male, 40% female. Sometimes it's getting up to 55, 45. Very detail oriented, very structure and process oriented. I market to them with more specific information, boxes of information, something that looks serious. Project managers don't respond to starbursts and big special offers. 2 incomes, own the house, 2 cars, 2 kids, 50% have master's degrees of some type. I know the persona. So now you don't have to go that deep into your internal personas, but do you understand the persona of a salesperson? Do you understand the persona of a finance person? Do you understand the persona of an operations person or a customer service representative? These are the people that you need to understand based on what you're servicing, the products that you're servicing. Thing I'm going to say about research, and this is another tool, is research. You have to research, but your research has to be balanced. So every time you're doing research, are you balancing that? Would you share some pointers on being more effective at out of project aspects? Yeah, I'm going to spend a good time on one of the tools that's best used for that before we end. So I'll finish up these slides pretty quickly. What I want to say to you about research is confirmation bias and cognitive diversity. The best product managers, as they're looking at the market, ensure that they're vetting their ideas against unlike thinkers. Meaning, I think this way, I got to vet it against people who think differently. That's what cognitive diversity is. Identity diversity is our gender, our race, maybe our religion. And those identity diversity items ultimately impact cognitive diversity. But I can tell you on more than one occasion that I've been with other races of people who are just like me, who thought just like me. So I'm looking for people who think differently than me as part of my research to vet the things I'm looking at, to help break down confirmation bias. Cognitive diversity breaks down confirmation bias. And what you're trying to do in the research is come up with a balance so that you protect yourself from false positives and false negatives. That's the worst thing in the research side. And what you're testing for in the out of project phases is you're testing for that. The best scenario would be able to come up with an algorithm based on the things you're looking at to tie in both quantitative and qualitative and come out with a number. And that number gives you a better understanding of that concept and whether it should work or not. And I've tried this in the training space, never really come to it. But remember, you have both. But you're still, this can't be done by an AI system because you still have to think. So we'll end with the idea of out of project. So there's so many different things that you can do. There's so many different things you can do with your inventory control systems. There's so many different things you could do with your ERP systems. There's so many different things you could do with your inventory control systems. There's so many things you could do with your point of sale systems or your CRM systems. So what we're trying to do in the out of project space is we're trying to align the strategy and the business plan, where the company is trying to go with our testing. So I might, from a training perspective, I might decide that I want to get into DevOps because of the universe size, because of the strategy of going down the level of training for Agile people. I would go up for Agile people if I'm training on business and leadership concepts for Agile, or product agility, which is what we're talking about here. Or I could go down and start talking about DevOps and DevOps tooling and containers, things like Ansible, tool sets like Git, things like that, Eliasson tool sets. So if I know what the strategy is, then I'm going to start testing nuggets of that. For me with DevOps, all right, let me do a bunch of DevOps webinars. How many people do I get into those webinars? What type of engagement happens? What are the ideas that come out of that? All right, take that finding. Now let me test out a specific course. All right, I'm going to put that course to market in a prototype. I have methods by which I'm going to do the learnings. And then as I learn, I'm going to adjust and grow and extend to the point where I say, okay, build this thing. Okay, build this thing. What we want to do is we want to move resources from in project and move the talent and skills to out of project because we're doing in project well. I could go a lot deeper. Maybe there should be a time to do a lean startup design thinking session on out of project product management for internal purposes. But I'll end with some questions here. Any tips on balancing between meticulous documentation, minimal documentation of learning as described as output? I'm trying to develop a way of capturing lessons learned. You know, Vance, I love that question. I love that question. Here's my problem, Vance. I'm a lean guy. I'm always going to go towards minimal documentation. I'm always going to go towards some gut, which you really shouldn't do. So I'm not the best person to answer that question for you. I would tell you that you should have some base metrics that you're looking at. Those base metrics should be constant, and you should definitely document on those base metrics and base learnings. I knew that I had a lead number I had to look at, a call-in number I had to look at, a registration number I had to look at, and those were documented meticulously. So I tried to focus just on the core and then breathe things over time, because you will get data overload. This is the world of analysis paralysis. This out of the project space is the world of analysis paralysis because you don't want to make decisions. Really, Vance, what you want to do is you want to let the market make the decisions for you. You want to tighten up your testing process, use your early adopters, get them engaged enough. This is for internal projects so that you can learn faster without the documentation, because ultimately, like the Black Swan says, you will learn because of the market. Your market, in most cases, is internal users. You will learn from them. The more you can learn from them, the more you can find testing to engage them, the more opportunity for success. That's one way of thinking about it. And then, Chatan, can we use this product approach when you were showing us now for reselling product? Yeah. Part of the reselling side, Chatan, is I don't want to build. I want to rent, or I want to partner. Part of organizational capability is if I really think I can create value, and I think I can make it viable over time, then I'll buy the capability. I'll buy the feasibility. And then ultimately that means I'll partner with somebody, or I'll buy it outright. And then if I see it working for scale and repeat, then I'll build it. That's how I would operate. I would partner on things I wanted to test. And then this is external mindset. Then I would go ahead and build based on, what was working. And most partners understand that happens. I have lots of partners, and I expect that if they sell something that, and they start selling something continuously, they might decide to just build it themselves. All right. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Let's see. I believe you will be emailing. Yes, we send out the recording and the slides as well. Any additional questions? Thoughts, comments? Wow, we covered a lot. Oh man, we covered a lot of information. You can email me at davidm@softed. If you have questions about additional classes, you can look on LinkedIn. We have a ton of activities going on for additional content. Yeah, it was awesome meeting everybody. This has been a blast. So have a great one. Enjoy. Thank you all for participating. Thank you all for being engaged with SoftEd. And hopefully see you again in another session. Thank you.